See how I built this volume and pause control for my home entertainment center using Esphome Home and Home Assistant. When it comes to watching TV in our house, I'm kind of a remote hog. My wife or other family member wants to pause the TV, they got to go through me. Well, that's obviously not a big deal, but I wanted to empower them, so I built this device, which has a rotary encoder, which acts as a button, or you can turn it. And there's a Wemos D1 Mini inside, running ESP Home software, talking to Home Assistant, talking to my multimedia equipment. And so if you push it, it tells the TV to pause or unpause. If you turn it, it tells the amplifier to raise or lower the volume. And I'm going to show you how to make one. Let's go to the bench. Okay, let's just go over the parts we'll need to do the one button controller. I printed this case. This really cool pattern on the side that was touching the bed. Very simple, just has a hole for the USB cable. Obviously we'll need a Wemos D1 Mini, and we'll program that in a moment. And then we just need to wire it up to this rotary encoder. And in order to do that, I like to use stuff like this. It's called hookup wire. I like solid. Some people like braided. And this one's cool because it's got all the colors I typically want. And it mostly doesn't tangle. And then, of course, you'll need some cutters and strippers, which, of course, you could probably make do with just these if you're careful, but I'm usually not that talented. Okay. Let's start hooking things up using the hookup wire, and we're going to solder the pins on the rotary encoder to the appropriate holes in the Wemos D1. I like to start with ground. Why not? And I've created a wiring diagram in a program called Fritzing. I hope I'm saying that right. I've never used it before. Kind of looks like I did it with a crayon, but I think it will get the point across. And I'll put a link to it down below in case you want to have it up on your screen or print it out. And just follow along. I will also show a few clips of me soldering, but I don't necessarily want to bore you with everything. Oh, by the way, if you're new to soldering and want to brush up on it a little bit, I'll link to a video below that will give you some helpful tips and hints and some cautions. You know, you can burn yourself, so please be careful. But you know, being able to make your own stuff is really cool. I've soldered ground to one of the pins on the button side and then to the middle on the encoder side. And then I have another wire that I'm going to solder onto the Wemos D1. So you want to note how the orientation of the board. The USB is going to go on the bottom, because this case has these little ridges here to hold up the other end. So it's going to go like that. So you want to solder the wires going down. That's definitely a mistake I've made before, which is why sometimes I have these little extra ones where I screwed up. Okay, ground. So we want to shove that in ground, and I'll just kind of bend it over and put it in my little helping hands and solder that. And then I'll cut a few more of these wires and strip them, and we'll use them to go from these other pins to the other GPIO. Don't make them too long because they're going to cram in there, but you know. Okay, that was a classic case of me messing up. I had the wire in the hole, and then it fell out just as the solder was solidifying, and it's kind of a pain to use that again. But the good thing is it doesn't matter. I'll just use a different hole and just make sure I update the Yaml accordingly. Okay, just for the record, I don't really enjoy soldering, but you kind of need to do it if you want to make your own stuff. And now I just have to rotate this over and wire, I guess, D3 and D4 to these two guys. Okay, well, that should be all the soldering. It's pretty easy. Okay, just all on one side. So I'm just gonna Oops, pluck it in there, and I'm gonna, use the nut and washer and put it all together in the knob. Okay, almost have it all put together here. Just smack it in there, and I'll probably have to glue that shut because it's not really, it's friction, but it's not really friction. So let's put this on here, and we got her, well, got to get on there a little bit better, but you get the idea. The next step is to plug it into my laptop and program it. From your Home Assistant portal, you'll want to select Esphome and New Device, and then open Esphome Web, unless you have HTTPS. Select Connect, choose your device from the list, and then click Prepare for First Time Use. And this will install the foundational software so that you can do further updates over Wi-Fi. Now you'll be able to connect it to Wi-Fi, which I'm not showing you here. And once you have that set up, it will provision it. And you can just close this now and go back to the Home Assistant portal. And from there, you'll see that it's been discovered, and you want to click on Adopt. Here's your chance to rename it. I'm going to rename it Volume Control. And then I'll just click on Adopt, and then we'll click on Install to install more firmware. Not exactly sure what the difference is. I've sped this up very quickly. It does take a little while. And once you see the colored output, then you know that it's finished installing, and you can close that window. And before we get to updating the code with the specifics of what we want, like in this case, volume control, you notice on the left side there, you see there's a notification, and that's because it's Home Assistant's discovered it. So let's just go ahead and deal with that. Say, check it out, find the device, and click configure. And I have two actually, but we'll just do the volume control and then just click submit. There's no major questions. You can choose an area if you want. And then great, now that device is part of the Esphome integration in Home Assistant. One more step we need to do, which I wish was sort of rolled into the last one we just did. While we're on the integrations page, you want to go to Esphome, and don't click on the 10 device, whatever devices you have. Click on this little arrow, and then go find the volume control that we just added. And then we have to click configure, and then we have to allow it to talk to Home Assistant. So I think that should be a step that's rolled in with the original discovery, but so far it's not. So let's go ahead and submit. And now we'll go on to the next step. So I think this is probably a good time to go over the GitHub repos that are relevant to this video. First one is this Esphome volume knob, which is linked down below. I forked it from someone else. It's almost exactly the same. I just made a couple of tweaks to this knob.yaml. This was really where I got the most of the information that I needed to do this project. This person designed the case and discussed the wiring and also wrote the code. So that was great. Really enjoyed getting that leg up. But for the purposes of this video, there's another repo under Impatient Maker, also linked down below, called Esphome Media Controller. And it actually has code and schematic for two different projects. Initially, when I started this video, I was going to make it about both products because they're very similar. One just has a few more buttons than the other. So here is the schematic for what we're building in this video with just the knob. And then another video that I'll be making soon has 3 more buttons, and that's my controller. And it lets me do things like turn out the lights in the room and stuff like that. More about that later. But for now, what I really want to call your attention to is the volume control.yaml. This is the code that we're going to use for this project. And it's almost completely cut and paste, but there's a couple of things you need to be aware of. One of is that I left the code in here that supports supporting a double click with the volume. And the double click will tell your Spotify player to go to the next track. I don't really have one hooked up to Home Assistant, so I don't use that. But like I said, I left the code in here so you could see how to do double click. But normally what I use it for is to pause my TV. And well, I left it kind of in caps here. You got to change it to whatever the name of your video player is. And you can just go through your, well, I can give you a quick little demo here. If you go to Home Assistant, Settings, Devices, Entities, and search for Media Player, you'll see what some of your choices are. And then the entity ID is what you're going to put in the code. And for me, it's my Sony, which is this one, the XBR. You'll have to put your own in there. The other thing is that the pins for the knob, D3, D4, which is for turning it up and down, and then for pushing the button is D2, although in the video where I was assembling this, I had to switch it to D1 because I messed up. So I wanted to call your attention to that as well. Oh, one more thing I thought of last night in the middle of the night was not only do you have to change this for your whichever component of yours does pause and play, but in my case, the one that does the audio is a different device. It's my Denon AVR receiver. So if your pause and play and volume are the same media player, then you can make those the same. But same thing, just go back to your settings and look for media. And so for me, it's going to be my Denon AVR. Okay. We're ready to copy this code. And I could select it and do Control-C or whatever, but I can also just use this copy raw file feature. So let's copy all that code. We'll go back to our portal. We'll go to ESP Home, and we'll edit. I've already done it once, so yours will look a little different, but Control-A, select it all, put our new code in there, and we'll go back and fix those things we just talked about. So the easiest way to do that is to open up Settings in a new tab, which I've done, and we'll just copy the name of the, I don't know why it pops up like that, but copy that. And so that's my audio player. I have to place that in two places for up and down. Oops, there it is right there. And then my TV is the Sony. Copy that. Where's the video guy? There we go. And that should be that. So we will do install, and we'll do it wirelessly this time. Okay, once again, once you see all that colored output, you are seeing the actual log of the device. And I can now turn the volume knob, and you can see the log output. One thing I just noticed is when I turn it to the right, it says down, and when I turn it to the left, it says up. So I'm going to reverse that. But let's test the button pushing too. That seems to be working just fine. Great. So just I'll edit, and all I have to do is switch these two pins. And we'll do another install. See how easy that is? Great. Let's try it now. So I'm going to turn it to the right. Turning it to the right, it says up. Turning it to the left, it says down. Good. That's working. Every once in a while, it skips a click. Okay, we can stop now. Then we'll say, I'll just close this. And we are done. We have our device. Next step would be to go turn on your TV and play with it. I hope you really enjoyed this video and got something out of it. So if you did, please click like and subscribe to my channel for more videos, including when we finish building this guy, which is the volume knob with some buttons on it. It's going to do some cool stuff.